Greetings, podcast powerhouses. Welcome to the Marvelous TV Club, your headquarters for the sharpest and most mischievous discussions of the latest episode of Marvel television. And that means it's time to complete our exploration of the first episode of Loki and start looking ahead to the second episode. There are a lot of podcasts that talk about Marvel TV, but what separates the Marvelous TV Club from the pack is the way we organize our approach. Instead of jumbling all of our thoughts together into one big pile of printed out dot matrix paper, we divide our analysis of each Marvel TV episode into 3 distinct shows, each with their own unique lens. Thursday's Storycast explored the primary themes of the first episode, namely the eternal struggle between fate and freedom of choice, which is obviously going to run through the whole series, as well as the archetype of the dystopian bureaucracy and the influences Loki drew on to construct the TVA. Saturday's Pondervision mused semi-responsibly on the most captivating questions and conundrums of the episode. We get into everything from the MCU's version of the trolley problem to the universal sense of restlessness we all experienced that the episode so fully tapped into. But now, we complete our analysis of Loki's premiere with this show, our Charactercast. This is where we evaluate the characters themselves. Like Mobius, we are obsessed with what makes them tick. I'm your multi-hyphenate host, producer, editor, social media maven, and more, Marc Faletti. And as always, on Charactercast, I'm joined by the Marvelous TV Club's very own Nexus being, Kristine Kippins. Hi, Kristine.
Hi, Marc.
Every time I rewatch this episode, the title sequence, the music, just gets more and more in my blood. I love it. It's creepy. It's epic. Am I alone in this, or does that strike any notes for you? No pun intended.
No, you're not alone. But it's something that has grown on me. I didn't like it at first because it was so different.
Yeah.
So very different from everything else we've experienced with the MCU. And it didn't feel familiar. You know, like it didn't feel like it was drawing on anything from the past at all to even like have a hint of it being tied to the MCU. But at the same time, it makes so much sense. Because we're in a completely different place, time, scenario. Like my mind melts a little bit every time I think more and more about this show. So I think the music is actually pretty perfect for how spooky and strange and how you just stay on your back foot with these fucking TVA people. It's perfect.
It reminds me of the X-Files theme music. They use a theremin in the Loki theme and has that creepy vibe. And obviously this is a detective show. But then there's that serial killer hint, right? Where it's like you're looking at all these changing letters that are sort of like a ransom note or something. And there's some Twilight Zone and True Detective vibes. So anyway, it just really does it for me. But you're right. It's unsettling, probably intentionally. But that was jarring the first time for sure.
Yeah.
So weird.
Yeah. But it's taking some getting used to. Just, I feel like we're a little bit like Loki the first time, right? It's like, whoa, this is a lot. I'm going to need a minute.
Well, speaking of, today we are going to talk about Loki, this Loki, the one that we're experiencing the show through, and, of course, the mysteriously murderous other Loki. We're going to talk about the TVA and our favorite people and scariest people from it. And, of course, we're going to discuss whether Mobius is someone who can be trusted. But let's start with that title character, Kristine, the Loki of the present, or, well, 2012, or wherever the hell the TVA is. At one of his low points, or possibly moments of clarity, I don't know, you tell me, Loki calls himself a villain. But Mobius disagrees and says that's not how he sees it. So let's settle this once and for all. Who is right about this Loki?
You're not going to like my answer.
Oh, okay.
They're both right.
Ah.
They are. Okay, so let me explain. This Loki is a villain. He's fresh off of stealing the Tesseract, mind controlling a bunch of people, and murdering a bunch of people on various continents on Earth, and leading a global invasion force. Okay? This Loki is still deep in the illusion, and it's only now beginning to crack a little bit. Okay? And we have no idea how long this honesty and vulnerability is going to last.
Right.
So Loki is right. He is a villain. But Mobius has the benefit of having seen Loki's entire life. at least 616 Loki. And he knows that he doesn't end up that way. That wasn't the end of his story. Mobius knows that Loki eventually lets the facade go. He lets the ego go and ends up serving his people and his brother. And he probably has a sense that Loki, that evolved Loki, exists somewhere buried in the Loki before him. And maybe he can pull him out. But this Loki doesn't know that Loki at all. So I think it's fair to say that both of them are right in this moment.
That raises an interesting question, because how much credit should we get for stuff that we're going to do? You know what I mean? Like, I'm really curious about that. It's very different in our world versus the TVA world because they know what he's going to do. So you can give someone some gold stars for eventually figuring it out and being less of a terrible person. But yeah, I can see why this Loki thinks he's a villain because he doesn't know all that stuff. And to your point, that then Mobius has a little more information. I just want to say, though, I still kind of blame Odin most of all in terms of who's responsible for this. Just because
I fucking hate Odin.
I feel like, being raised by a conqueror in a world where they rule multiple realms who do not want to be subjugated to them, that might fuck you up a little bit and make it easy for you to believe that the little people are expendable.
Listen, Odin is to blame literally for everything, okay? Everything. I fully support that claim. I mean, if he hadn't raised those two boys the way he did, and building up this expectation for Loki that he was born to be a king, but he didn't mean of Asgard, but he just let the comment hang out there so Loki can make the assumptions that he wanted, and then fostered this really toxic competition between him and his brother, and also keeping him in the dark about his parentage. Like, Odin fucked up everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Because let's not forget that Thor was a piece of shit at the beginning of the first Thor movie. He was like, I just want to murder people and conquer stuff and get drunk. He was the ultimate frat bro. Also, Odin's fault. That said, we do have responsibility to work on the issues that our parents gave us. So I don't want to absolve Loki of blame responsibly. Self-medicating with terror and murder is a reason, but it is not an excuse, Kristine.
Fair enough.
But here's the thing that keeps sticking with me about this Loki. During that life montage, Loki can clearly see that he and Thor fully reconcile. Odin truly loves him as a son, but this doesn't seem to register at all with Loki, or at least I guess he doesn't find any comfort in it. But isn't that repeatedly what he has told us he has always and only wanted? To be seen, to move out of Thor's shadow, to get recognized as a full equal with these folks. So what is up with the fact that he just blows past all of that to obsess over the fact that he doesn't become some kind of fancy king or whatever?
Okay, so I'm kind of excited about this question. And to be honest, I was a little surprised by it because that's not how I saw that scene at all. Yes. And it may be because I'm in full-blown Loki apologist mode, but I do love it when you and I see things differently. So what I saw was Loki tears up when he sees Frigga's body again, right? Like he's gone back in the room. He's seeing this moment again. But he begins to weep when Odin says that he loves his sons, lips trembling and everything. And then he actually laughs pleasantly, not sarcastically at all, at the thought of Thor hugging him during that scene at the end of Ragnarok when we have that more evolved Loki. And I thought he was incredibly moved by the scenes with his family. Like, he was a bit of a weepy mess, but he did laugh at the end. Sure. Hunter B-15 comes in to prune him and asks, what's so funny? And locally, oh my God. And Loki responds sarcastically this time, glorious purpose, And I think part of that laughter that might resonate as like, maybe not being moved or not being touched by what he just saw. To me, I think part of it was shock.
Okay.
Like he did just witness his own death on top of learning that his entire existence isn't what he thought it was, he's in a place where infinity stones are being used as fucking paperweights.
Yeah.
Plus, he saw both of his parents die. The death of one he just learned was partly his fault. But I do believe that the other side of that laughter at the end is a bit of annoyance with himself for ending up the way he did. Like, he truly believed in this grand destiny for himself that, Odin built up. And I'm not sure having his neck, spine, and windpipe crushed by Thanos qualified as a glorious purpose. It's not enough for a man like Loki, who was brought up believing that he was born to be king, to die like that. And I think now he feels a little foolish for believing in that destiny for his whole life and just recently aggrandizing about it. Like when he landed in the Gobi Desert and he saw those people, he immediately got up on that rock to stand above them and repeat that line again, And I'm just like, oh, Loki, baby, come on. It's time to start growing. But yeah, I think he felt foolish seeing the way his life played out, being in the moment that he's in now, being that 2012 Loki and just being like, fucking hell, I can't believe I've been saying this for this long and this is how it's supposed to end for me.
See, that's the thing though. I feel like if he learns without full context that Odin is totally on his team, that he and Thor are like fighting and standing together, that you would assume there's a ton of amazing adventure between those lines, on top of the fact that, again, ostensibly you're getting what you want, because I sort of equate this to the idea that, okay, Loki found out he didn't get his big break. He didn't get his dream job. This is something Jesse and I talked a lot about, that we sort of share the same mutual restlessness over this idea. I think a lot of people do, just this idea of like, what if I could be doing more? But if you were to learn that at the end of your life, that didn't happen, but the two people you care about most well and truly loved you, and it was like all good, I guess I just feel like I wouldn't be as angry as Loki was.
See, but I don't think he's angry. I think he feels embarrassed. I think he feels foolish. You know what I mean? That's where I think the laughter is coming from. It's a little bit, I don't want to say self-hatred. It's a little too far, but he's annoyed with himself. He's like, you stupid fool. Like, you've gone through your entire life thinking that you need to be a conqueror in order to earn your father's love and your brother's respect. And it didn't have to be that way. You could have just been yourself this whole fucking time. You didn't have to put on this illusion, Yeah,
I think that makes some sense. The idea that he was going about it all wrong to this point.
Right.
And that obviously something changes. I guess the certitude, though, that is within him, that did in fact happen, I guess I would have thought that would have brought him more of a measure of comfort than it would humiliation. But Loki is so proud as a person that maybe that's exactly why has that sardonic laugh at the end of that clip.
Yeah. But to me, I think the laugh has a lot more to do with Thanos and the end than it does with his family. Because you could see the tears. You can see that genuine laugh that he had watching that scene from Ragnarok, melted my heart. You know what I mean? So I think he was touched and he was comforted. But then he immediately sees Thanos break his neck.
Yeah.
And I think also that last line that he says to Thanos in this moment is so powerful. He says to Thanos, "You'll never be a god," which is something that Loki has said about himself his entire life. I am the god of mischief. I'm a god. He says it over and over and over again, even though Odin tells both of his sons that they're not gods. Everyone calls them gods. It's just because we perceive them that way because we're mortal and, they seem impervious to everything and that they'll live forever. No, Odin dies, Frigga dies, Thor someday will die. They're not immortal. They're just that much more powerful than us that we think that they're gods. But Loki thought his whole life that he was a god and should be revered as such. And then to see in that moment the way he's ended by just, crushing his neck. And now he's in this place where his divinity means nothing.
Right.
Absolutely
True.
nothing.
And the being who crushed his throat was using these infinity stones that she hasn't learned quite yet, but it's like, we'll immediately then learn our paperweights. So if he was so easily destroyed by someone who had these paperweights, according to where he is now, that's a humbling experience.
It's crushing. It's absolutely crushing. Which is why I'm in full Loki apologist mode. I am in my Loki field so badly.
See, I guess I then want to lay blame at the feet of Mobius for his shitty supercut, because I feel like if Loki had seen, one, that he brought a cool ship to save all the people of Asgard, two, actually got to cause Ragnarok, which feels like a pretty important thing or powerful thing to have done, and then three, not just his own death, but his brother's reaction to his death. I feel like if Mobius had included those three things, then maybe Loki would have realized that there was a little more greatness to his story than maybe he felt at the end there. I don't know.
Well, you have to wonder why the supercut was cut the way it was.
Indeed.
Which we might get to later.
We just talked about Loki suffering humiliation, and he keeps coming, right? The hits keep coming. Every step of the TVA process is designed to humble and humiliate him. Do you think that humility will stick? The stuff that he sort of absorbed from that, the fact that he stepped away from his ego towards the end of the episode in his final conversation with Mobius. Do you think that's going to stick?
No, not at all. Not at all. So listen, my I'ma Need More Wine podcast co-host Jocelyn loves to talk about how her good sis Wanda Maximoff had a bad day.
Okay.
All in one day, she fought Thanos' army, had to kill Vision, watched Thanos bring Vision back to life only to kill him again, get dusted, and because she was dusted, the endgame fight that ends Thanos was the same fucking day for her. So, and she wakes up, she comes to, the fight's over and everyone's back and Vision isn't. So Wanda had a very bad day. I would argue Loki is also having a very bad day. He lost the Battle of New York, which is now an intergalactic embarrassment for him. He was cuffed and gagged by his own brother. He escapes only to be caught again by the TVA in a really humiliating way.
Right.
He goes through this court system that's absolutely rigged and has nothing to do with justice.
Nope.
And he enters the TVA thinking he's a god. And then, I said this already. By the end of the day, he's what? What is he? A man whose life has already played out, but he doesn't get to play it, cut off from his own timeline without any choice in his life? Like, Loki needs time to process and come to grips with all of the revelations that the TVA has thrown his way. This is a big fucking deal, right? But I think once he does, Loki's gonna be his typical tenacious self and try to figure out a way to make this situation work for him. I think Mobius and Loki were very transparent and both of them gave us their end goals here. Loki is going to burn this place to the ground. And that doesn't sound like a humble man to me.
I'm totally clipping that for the social promos. That's I'm totally clipping that. That's perfect. I will say gods probably change a little slower than the rest of us too. I know I changed less quickly than I did when I was in my 20s. So I can only imagine that in my thousands, it might take a minute for a change to set in. I might need some repeated reinforcement, no matter how bad any given one day was. The other thing that cracks me up about this is Loki keeps that Tesseract with him at all times. Kristine, is that his whoopee?
I think it is. It's like his blanket. It's his teddy bear. It's his connection to his timeline.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel,
I hope that stays with him
so
the whole
bad for
time.
him.
Just this little cube he's carrying around with him adorably as a bit of a comfort, a reminder that he's, questing, I guess. It would be really nice for him to have something like that, and maybe that kind of thing will bring him back into himself. But Kristine, Loki's a detective now, so I guess I want to know, will he be a good one or not?
So as my man said in the episode, he's smart.
Yeah.
He's not dumb, like people say. He's smart. So not to mention, detectives need to be insightful and understand a person's nature. And you saw the way Mobius worked Loki during his interrogation. He got a lot out of Loki, probably more than anyone we've ever seen, right? You need that quality in a detective, and Loki actually has it. I'm so glad that the show chose to highlight the quote from Frigga that has always stayed with me. When she projects herself into Loki's cell to visit him, after he's been punished for his attack on Midgard, he intentionally tries to hurt her by saying she's not his mother. And Frigga says in response, "Oh, Loki, always so perceptive about everyone but yourself." If Loki hadn't killed Phil Coulson, he might have won the Earth for himself. He did a really good job of playing the Avengers like a fucking fiddle. So I think he'll be great at figuring out what variants want, what their plans might be. However, since they're hunting Loki himself, and his mother says he's perceptive about everyone but himself, maybe he won't be so great at this particular assignment. But if he chooses to cooperate, I think he would be, because his response to Frigga was part of his act, his illusion, his, what was it? His desperate act for control. So Loki's actually pretty self-aware, which he demonstrates during this episode. But who knows if he'll be, if he'll continue to be this open with Mobius. I fucking doubt it.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to this tension between his ego, which clouds his vision of himself, and those moments of clarity when he sees the truest versions of himself. So interestingly, the more he becomes self-aware and self-accepting and self-knowledgeable, the better he will be at hunting himself down. And the more he lets his ego get in the way and he makes this about the outcome and not the process, or how everybody perceives him or how much power he has according to the TVA or whatever, the worse he's going to be at hunting himself. The other challenge for him is that detectives need to be rigorous and methodical. And I'm not sure that our chaos guy is going to pull that off in a way that will lead him to conclusive results.
Conclusive TVA results. But maybe great Loki results.
That's fair. I also will say disguises are a cool part of any detective job, or at least on the TV shows, probably not in real life. Loki can pull off some awesome disguises, what with being a shapeshifter and all. He also probably has some cool underworld connections, quite literally, that he can draw on to find people or get things that he needs or trade on some information, right? I expect there to be a scene where Loki has to pass the equivalent of the $100 bill to somebody who is going to play the informant. And I'm real curious to see if we get Loki trading on all of the bad people he knows in his life.
I'm so curious as to how they're going to manage Loki when they leave the TVA. Like, does the lack of magical power come with the job? Or if he has to go back to Midgard, will he be able to be a fully realized Loki that can shapeshift and do all types of things? Or because he's an agent of the TVA now, maybe he can't. I'm very curious as to how they're going to do this, because it would seem very foolish to take Loki out of the TVA.
Yeah, a little bit. I will say, apparently, Asgardians have very weak necks, whether it's in Ragnarok or this show. Put something around his neck, like a little bow tie that controls him, and I guess he will become as powerless as a puppy.
Oh my god, like the little variant in the Ms. Minutes video.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I've got a lot to say about that fucking video, but I'll wait.
That it was gorgeous and perfect and explained everything, and why should we question the TVA? Okay, we'll get there. First, though, I want to talk about our other main character, Mobius. What, Kristine, is your read on this guy? Can Loki trust Mobius?
First of all, main character my ass. This is the Loki show, not the Loki and Mobius show. So
Fair
Owen
enough.
Wilson, you're the sidekick here, buddy. Just so you know. Because I know Owen Wilson is listening to this podcast.
We're all somebody's side character, Kristine. That's what we're talking about with Jesse. It's like we're all somebody's side character. I would watch the Mobius show. I'm just telling you.
I mean, listen, Owen Wilson with gray hair looks good. Like, I don't think I've ever been more attracted to Owen Wilson in my life than in this show. But yes, my read on this guy, can Loki trust him? No, the fuck he cannot. Okay. No. Okay. Like, for the simple reason that Mobius has studied the shit out of Loki. He's trying to catch a Loki. And I appreciate his transparency at the end of the episode where it's like, yeah, dude, I'm trying to recruit you so that you can catch yourself. Like, I appreciate that. But for that very simple reason that he's trying to catch a Loki, this Loki can't fucking trust him.
Okay. I'm not sure I'm there. Admittedly, we just talked about his dodgy supercut of Loki's life that seemed designed to evoke a very particular reaction. And admittedly, Mobius implied to Loki falsely that if he went along with this plan that he might get to go back to his timeline. So those were problems for the trust circle that these two are trying to form for each other. On the flip side, though, when Loki confronted Mobius with the truth, I can't go back, can I? Mobius doesn't deny it at all. And I think that's the spark of trust that we might be able to draw more from as they develop their relationship. Because we know Mobius has compassion. He's very gentle with the kid in France, who may or may not have been Loki. I hope that we find out more about that, because there's a story in the comics of a kid Loki that is really important. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Owen Wilson turns out to have been talking to the very Loki who caused the end of the timeline. But anyway, I digress. Clearly, Mobius is very good at making connections to people and diffusing tension, and he does seem a little bit willing to challenge the system, right? He obviously recruited Loki in the face of whatever regulations, I'm sure, discouraged that, and the fact that Judge Renslayer told him that it was a bad idea, and he hates the Nightmare Department, so that's a good sign, right?
I mean, we don't know what the Nightmare Department is unless Nightmare is running it, and even then, I don't know what that means because I haven't read the comics. I just know that Nightmare is kind of scary.
Yeah, I actually don't know a ton about Nightmare either, but yeah, it's pretty scary. It's another version of like evil demon character, right?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing though, Mark, and I hope you can just help me make sense of this. What I don't get is if all time exists at once, then surely Mobius must know how this plays out.
One would think that the TVA is able to see its own loops, but maybe that's the exception for the rule, is that the TVA can see a timeline. They exist outside of that timeline. That's the timeline they're monitoring. It may be the case that they cannot look into the time of their own particular time space, because that would be a kind of loop or circle that, obviously, again, Mobius's name, Mobius strips are these loops that have no edges or, like that you can kind of invert inside and out and all that. And it just, I'm sure that that's all part of it. But I would say it makes sense to me that you can observe a timeline that you stand out of, but can't observe your own.
Fine.
Just like Frigga said about Loki, right? Loki can see everything else about everybody else, but, the TVA might not be able to see themselves. So we'll see. I think also, obviously, this episode was about Mobius recruiting Loki. If and when Loki gets his hackles up about the TVA, I could also see this turning into a situation where Loki becomes the one to recruit Mobius for whatever anti-TVA shenanigans they get up to.
No, I agree. This is the thing with timey-wimey shows. I never have a good sense of how they might play out, which is part of the excitement, but also part of the madness, because I then it's like I have my own sacred timeline in my brain, and then all of a sudden, all of these branches start going out, and I have like just nothing but madness in my head after a while. So, okay, I think your answer helps calm my brain down just a little bit.
I wouldn't trust myself, so, be careful with that. Don't trust me too much, but, speaking of all the trust issues. So then if Mobius is someone not to be trusted, Kristine, what do you think makes him tick, right? He asks Loki what makes Loki tick. I want to ask you, what makes Mobius tick? What's his primary motivation? Like, what is he about?
So it seems to me that these TVA folks are built to have a singular purpose. And Mobius told us exactly what he's about. He specializes in particularly dangerous variants. And all he seeks is, quote, a deeper understanding of the fearsome god of mischief. That's all he wants. Like, he wants to catch and clip this terrible variant Loki that has run amok with the sacred timeline. So I think he's going to try to learn as much as he can through interacting with our Loki, with our 2012 Loki, to figure out how to catch this future badass one that I'm really excited to meet.
Hell yeah.
And I'm wondering if there's only one. Maybe there's more than one of them.
I would bet that there might be a cabal of Lokis. Keep in mind, this is a Rick and Morty writer, and Rick and Morty famously had the Council of Ricks, which was a bunch of Ricks running around from alternate timelines doing shit together. So will they rip off Rick and Morty that much? I don't know, but I like the idea that Loki goes and recruits other Lokis from young Loki and Lady Loki and various other Lokis, and who knows? It could be really fun that there's like a cabal of Lokis.
Okay, I had no idea it was a Rick and Morty writer involved. And I've literally only seen one episode of Rick and Morty. My friends convinced me to watch Pickle Rick.
Oh yeah, Pickle Rick, sure.
Which was absolute genius. But I do know that they do a lot of timey-wimey stuff on Rick and Morty, and I've been meaning to watch the show, and I've heard nothing but good things about it. So, okay, so that same writer is involved with Doctor Strange.
Oh yeah, wrote the Doctor Strange
Scarlet
movie,
Witch movie. Okay, great. Perfect. Oh, the MCU knows what the fuck it's doing. I love it.
It's really, really exciting shit. And that's why I trust that Mobius has a heart and soul, maybe not a literal soul, but a figurative soul to him. Because honestly, Kristine, I'm kind of disturbed at how much I see myself in Mobius. If I'm just putting all my cards on the table, I see a lot of myself in this dude. And before you hang up on me, here's the thing. He's a people pleaser, right? He desperately wants people to like him. But that is often, right, in conflict with his passionate opinions and his desire to convince everybody else that he's right. I think about his arguments with the judge. And he also still harbors a lot of hope for institutions, I feel like, despite maybe some evidence that the system is not so great. And I guess I sympathize with all of those qualities because Mobius is hunting stability in timelines and relationships, Kristine. I guess that's what I see as his primary motivation. So that could work for Loki or against Loki, right? The relationship with Loki and or the idea of stability, that obviously that might favor some sort of more totalitarian TVA timeline stuff, but I could see how dishonesty, like seeing the TVA as a kind of betrayal that he has been lied to, that could be the key to unlocking Mobius as an ally and not just a sort of overseer.
Yeah, I'm not there yet with Mobius. I think, though, that would be an interesting way for this to play out. My only thing is my perspective on Mobius is definitely different. And I was just like, oh no, Marc, no, you're not Mobius. You don't do that to yourself. Like, dude, because here's the thing. You might be a people pleaser, but I don't think Mobius is in order to please people. I think he does it to get what the fuck he wants.
Oh, interesting.
That whole thing with Loki in the beginning with I'll help you burn the place down and this, that, and the other. Okay, might be some foreshadowing for what you just described. However, in the moment, I think it's Mobius, being good cop. And then eventually he switches to bad cop, where he starts like yelling at Loki and he's forcing him to confront himself and all of that stuff, all in an attempt to learn more about Loki, to see if this Loki can be self-aware in order to help him catch a Loki. You know what I mean? Like, to me, none of that was about Loki himself. It's about Mobius's end goal in catching this damn Loki. And sure, he pats the little boy on the head and he's like, oh, you've got some chewing gum. Enjoy it while it lasts, little one. Okay. And then we'll go and snap the boy's neck, basically, with the thingamajiggy that clips the timeline. Like, I'm sorry, if somebody pats me on the head before they fucking murder me, I'm not going to think about them as a sympathetic being. I'm going to think of them as a fucking sociopath.
Yeah, that's some old Yeller shit, right? Like, that's tough. All right, so I guess what I've really learned in this conversation right now between us is that I am very susceptible to some good cop shit. Like, I need to be careful if I'm ever being interrogated. Look out for the good cop shit, because apparently I'm a sucker for it, Kristine.
Call me or Jesse to represent you, because we will be like, shut the fuck up, Marc.
I'll be like, no, we're cool. This guy and I, we're like totally vibing. We're like the same, me and this detective. And then I'm like ratting myself out. Oh, man. Yeah, he totally gets me, this guy, Kristine. It's going to work out great. He said he'll cut me a deal. Oh, fuck. All right. Well, hey, to Frigga's point, like, I just need to learn a little bit more about myself. So thanks for opening my eyes to my soft spot.
You're welcome. I'm always here for therapy, babe.
If I won't, yeah, appreciate that. So give it to me straight then. We're going to talk about the TVA now. That's some Mobius stuff. We've talked about Loki. We talked about Mobius. Let's talk about the TVA itself. How evil is the TVA going to turn out to be? Are they right about stuff, or are they straight up villains, or something in between?
Marc, Audio Avengers.
The
TVA is the fucking worst. They are the absolute worst, Marc.
Okay,
I don't trust these motherfuckers. I don't trust them. Okay, but first, I need you to correct me if I'm wrong, but this is my understanding of the TVA. There were once multiple timelines that somehow were fighting each other for supremacy. Right?
Very vague, but yes.
Right. First of all, that doesn't make any fucking sense to me. What is the actual harm of multiple branches of time if time isn't linear?
Well, the TVA video is a little bit vague, Kristine, but I have two potential answers to this question.
Lay it on me.
They use the word war, which implies that there's actual fighting between the timelines, that once they become aware of each other, they are either having to fight for the real estate of time-space, that they are battling for some kind of supremacy or the ability to branch out or spill out or have more room, more literal time space to themselves. So that's one possibility, that once it gets crowded, it creates like a situation like any other crowd where people start jostling and then it becomes worse from there. The other possibility is that it became so crowded that the timeline started intersecting with each other in really dangerous, chaotic, and destructive ways. That's kind of what I would assume, although I wouldn't have used the word war. But my guess would be, hey, eventually all of these strands start tangling up and nobody wants like a hairknot of timelines. And so that would be a potential reason to have to make some of these hard choices, because if you don't brush that hair, so to speak, then it just becomes a knot.
See, but that means that time is something tangible then, which to me doesn't make any sense.
Well, they show the TVA timekeepers, almost holding the timeline in that video. Obviously, that's an analogy, a metaphor or something, as Mobius would say. But I think that it might be the case that if you can step outside of time like the TVA is, that you might be able to perceive or shape time more like a tangible object.
So if you can stand outside of time and you can almost see the timelines, these knots, as you call them, that means there's space for your existence, right?
But the universe may be finite in some capacity, in the capacity for a certain amount of time space. Though, of course, that seems paradoxical because of the potential infinityness of space. But like,
Right.
if wherever space and time exist, like in that our universe is expanding into this nothingness, if that nothingness has boundaries and time has similar kinds of boundaries, then they all might intersect. But if you're skeptical of that, you probably have good reason to be, because there's no reason for there to be boundaries for time. Why can't there be infinite timelines?
Right. So this war, quote unquote, of timelines sounds like bullshit to me. So
Okay.
that's where I am with the beginning of that. And then next bit I need you to confirm is at some point the timekeepers chose a timeline
Mm-hmm.
and built the TVA and all of its staff to maintain that timeline as the only timeline. Is that right?
That's my understanding as well, that they essentially pulled an end game and went back to the start of things probably, and from somehow outside of space-time, kept one branch of the river flowing and cut off every other as they went.
And the timeline they chose is 616, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think of that as more like the comics version of the timeline, the 616, but, you know, we call this one 616 too, so just depends. But yes, I suppose so.
It was at the end of Loki's film. You know,
Oh,
it said
right,
Loki,
right.
Life is in 616.
616,
Okay.
That's right. You're right. Yeah, so I guess that's our number here too.
Particularly with those two responses, I definitely don't trust these motherfuckers.
Okay.
Because the space lizards probably picked the timeline that ensures their own existence and supremacy. So fuck that. So plus, if this is the sacred timeline, why is it 616 and not number 1?
Right.
Shouldn't the first timeline be the sacred timeline? Isn't that not the path of time that is most pure and in its sacred form?
You know, history is written by the victors, and
Correct.
sure seems like these space lizards won some kind of contest to shape whichever timeline they got to shape, and presumably are keeping out all of their future opponents in whatever the multiverse war came to be.
Right. So I don't trust them whatsoever. They're only out for themselves is what it feels like to me. But the moment that they confirmed for me that they're the bad guys was during the Miss Minutes video that honestly really could have started with Steve Rogers sitting on an elementary school chair being like, so you broke the sacred timeline.
That makes me happy.
That'd have been nice. But Ms. Minix, she was explaining what a variant is, and she says, maybe you started an uprising, or we're just late to work. And when she said that, I was like, wait, are you fucking kidding me, Mark? Being late to work is a justification for your disintegration? There's absolutely no compassion, no empathy, no justice at the TVA. There's just order and efficiency where everything is in black and white and shades of gray are wiped out. I fucking hate them, Mark.
Yeah.
I really don't like them.
And calling timeline murder pruning is also alarming. It's just very cold and calculating and
Yes.
intentionally dehumanizing. If they were good, they would probably be more respectful and solemn about their duties. And, so for example, if they did believe honestly that this was the only way to like save trillions and trillions and trillions of people throughout all of time, you would kind of honor or respect the fact that these variants have to go, and you would try to treat them better, I would think. Because as I said on Pondervision, the fact that they're killing these variants instead of just setting them up in their own little separate reality where they can have a life of some kind is totally unnecessary. But if the TVA is taken down, I do think we will learn that they were doing a lot of things to keep the universe chill. Because if Marvel can turn the blip into something super messy and disruptive, then I have a feeling that destroying the TVA will cause a shitload of unexpected problems. There's a movie coming out that might deal with that.
Yes, and I'm very much looking forward to it. But, you were talking about, like, how cold they are. And, like, to build on just how cold and heartless and unfeeling these damn TVA people are, they confirm you're a living creature before killing you.
Mm-hmm.
That scene with Loki going through what to us looks like a metal detector when he's asked to his knowledge if he was a robot was the moment upon first watch that I decided I love this TV show. It was hilarious. It was played to perfection. But by the end of the episode, it is probably one of the most fucked up scenes.
Yeah.
They make you confirm you have a soul before wiping it out of existence. It is so incredibly fucked up.
Yeah.
And their whole kangaroo court of a judicial process is just bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm really glad Jesse explained the lack of due process here during Pondivision because I think it's really important. This isn't a judicial system as we know it. It's set up like one, probably to make variants that have experienced the judicial system more comfortable. And I think you've discussed this on previous episodes. So the douchey American whose dad sits on the board of Goldman Sachs is in the same processing area as Loki, right? And Loki's had royal justice administered to him, which is like a judge and jury wrapped into one being, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the Skrull that came in with them at the same time is nowhere to be found.
Right.
He might be experiencing this process differently, right? But the bottom line is the process is bullshit. It's all formality to keep these TVA folks busy and murder everyone who learns of the TVA's existence. Variants are pruned, period. The douche got pruned just for not taking a goddamn ticket. He didn't even get to see the judge for appearance's sake. I don't trust their reasons. I don't trust their process. And I don't trust the setup of the TVA either. Massive bureaucracies exist for one purpose: to not get shit done. But the TVA is getting shit done. They're just murdering variants left and right. So what is it that they're not getting done? What is the purpose of this bureaucracy? I think it's to keep the TVA staff so focused on their singular job to the point where my man Casey doesn't even know what a goddamn fish is, that they don't have a full sense of what the TVA as a whole does. And that is just another reason for me not to trust this whole fucking operation.
Well, it's good to know you're an objectivist and libertarian about these things and are anti-bureaucracy. As someone who supports a national healthcare system, I'm not signing on to the idea that all large bureaucracies exist not to get shit done. I'm not saying they are efficient or as effective as they could possibly be, but I am here for a large bureaucracy when it is warranted. And honestly, if they were clearer with us about what the implications of the unchecked timelines would be, I actually think I could muster a pretty, compelling defense for them. But the way they obfuscate it and the dismissiveness with which they treat the people who they are essentially having to sacrifice for the greater good, supposedly, is just, I mean, I'm not going to stand for these guys.
Well, good.
So the thing I keep wondering about is these timekeepers themselves, though. Do you think we're going to meet them or what? And if we do meet them, what are they going to be like?
The space lizards. I think if they exist outside of time and the TVA, I don't think we will meet them. But and this is just an example of one of the branches in my timeline of madness that is my brain went to. At one point I was like, what if Loki is a timekeeper?
Ooh.
What if, right? What if somehow this is the beginning of Loki's rise to taking over one of the timekeeper positions?
God, that's amazing.
Wouldn't it be wild? It'd be wild.
And it fits the whole theme of Loki that we've seen throughout the movies. He becomes Odin secretly, right? Why not become one of these timekeepers? I would love that. I kind of imagine them. I'm torn between two ideas of these timekeepers. One is that they're sort of like the consultants in Office Space, the Bobs. I don't know if anyone remembers the Bobs from the movie Office Space, but it's just that idea that they think they know everything, so they come into the office and they just start firing people left and right. Prune, 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 right? That's the consultant's job in a lot of large corporations. And so the idea that they just kind of sit down and are like, Loki, we'll put you in a position where you have as many as 4 people working right underneath you. It just feels, I could see that they're going to be treated like consultants, and especially in a show that is critiquing corporate bureaucracy and large bureaucracies, that would feel like a really interesting component of it, because consultants are definitely part of the rot. The other thing, though, is we may very well get a Wizard of Oz moment. I could totally see a situation where Loki pulls back the curtain and there's like 3 cowardly frogs who got their hands on a couple of the reality stones from different timelines and did all this shit, right? Because they have the little red gems on their heads, which I'm sure is ceremonial. I honestly think in the cartoon, they all have 3 little red gems on their heads.
Oh,
but
I missed that.
Marvel is telling us very clearly with that messy drawer that this is not about the Infinity Stones. Get over the fucking Infinity Stones. We did our Infinity Stone story, so I don't really think the Reality Stones are in there. But I do think if you had 3 copies of the Reality Stone, you might be able to reshape the timeline even if you're just a couple of frogs.
Oh, that'd be so wild, dude.
Yeah.
Because then it also, heals my heart a little bit. Because, when Loki opened that drawer and saw all of those Infinity Stones, for him, it was a powerful moment because he recognized the power of where he was, right? That the Infinity Stones were just rocks that were kept in a fucking drawer or used as paperweights, right?
Yep.
Whereas where he's from, they keep the fabric of existence together, right? Like they're the most powerful objects in the entire universe. But for us as viewers, it was that plus the insignificance of the deaths of Gamora, of Black Widow, of Vision, of Tony Stark, of hundreds of Wakandans, the whole of Loki, the whole fight for the right for half of the universe to exist is tied up in those stones, and to see their powerlessness, their tiny minusculeness in the TVA was offensive and broke my heart. And I was just like, I literally had to pause the television when I first saw it, because the wave of that hitting me was so powerful. I remember crying in the movie theater when Gamora died.
Yeah.
Crying, And it was just, oh God, it was terrible.
Well, here's the thing. We saw in the trailers, right, that there's a moment when it looks like Loki is talking to Black Widow in the Soul Stone space. And I wonder if there's some Soul Stones floating around in this space, if we're going to get that, those stones maybe will matter, because that's one way he could get to Natasha, right, is through that Soul Stone. Right.
Okay, so I did not see that. So I did not know that was happening. I don't think I've seen all of the Loki previews. Or did you say that was for the Black Widow movie?
It's like a trailer. No, it's in the Loki ones, yeah.
Okay, so I completely missed that. But to go back to what you were saying about the timekeepers and them having reality stones, I would much prefer that. Because then at least the power of the Infinity Stones are restored. And then their deaths will be maybe just as meaningful as before. But seeing them in that drawer in that moment, brought to the viewer the tininess, the minusculeness of each frickin' Avenger in the broad scope of the universe where the TVA exists. So I would prefer that. Let them have Infinity Stones in their head.
That's funny because I respect what Marvel's trying to do, assuming that it's the case that they're trying to be like, hey, literally, we're putting the Infinity Stones in a drawer and closing it. Because, of course, the most powerful MacGuffins in the universe, if you just can't ever stop obsessing about them or coming up with reasons that you could undo the plot of every movie by getting whichever particular stone from back in time or whatever, like, it just becomes impossible to tell a story. And I think we're creating this new cinematic language around things like superheroes and world-altering and dimension-altering powers, where we have to sort of, part of the suspension of disbelief is saying, okay, how can we put this MacGuffin behind us so that we can tell new stories? And so I'm actually pretty desperate to get away from the Infinity Stones. Like, I love that arc, but I like the idea of like closing it off, even if technically whatever we see in, say, Quantum Mania could be resolved by having, you know, one of those time stones or whatever. It feels like it could be a bit of a slap in the face, but I also think as viewers of this stuff, we have to figure out how to give them the space to tell new stories, even with these very powerful devices that technically are lurking in the background.
Well, I agree with you, Mark, but God damn it, why'd you have to come up with that idea of them having it in their heads? Because then I was all like, oh, I got all excited for that, because that would help heal my heart.
Do you remember how excited I got about the idea that all of this in WandaVision was happening in that moment in Infinity War where they're like, where Wanda's blasting him in the stone, and this whole thing was like inside that reality, and like it just breaks my heart every time I think about it. And of course, that was totally untrue. So never trust my theories, Kristine. I love coming up with them. I feel like they're often very adorable and pretty sometimes, but they are false hope.
Yes, I feel like Loki in the interrogation room where I'm like coming to grips with my purpose. And apparently my purpose is for you to throw your wild theories on and get all excited about, and then I get my heart broken.
You are definitely not a side character in my story, Kristine. If anything, it's the other way around. And I'm good with that. I'm always looking up at you. It's appropriate. I want to talk about the staff of the TVA, because even if the TVA is pure evil, I'm not sure that every one of the people who works for them is. So, besides Mobius, and I don't think he would probably be your answer based on our previous conversation, but just excluding him for the purpose of having already dissected this guy, is there a TVA member that you really liked, who was your favorite or you're most interested to learn about in future episodes?
So I have one for each aspect of your question.
Oh.
So like the person who is my favorite, who like I just loved right away, was probably everyone's answer is fucking Pillboy. Like, I love Casey.
Yeah.
Casey was just so adorable and like quintessential like desk dude who doesn't have a fucking window in his office, who's just keeping his head down, doing his work diligently, and like probably is pissed with some of his other colleagues from other departments because they don't treat him with the respect that he deserves.
Yep.
You know? So like, I fucking love Pillboy. Casey's great.
Well, I didn't realize you were such a fan of Snitches, Kristine. He's such a fucking tattletale. He runs off to those old dudes with their sashes to be like, you know, wah, wah, wah. I don't know, man. I like Casey, but he's a bit of a tattletale.
Oh, but Casey damn near got annihilated by Hunter B-15. Like, what the fuck, man? He had a traumatic moment at work where this variant comes in and threatens him with his life, talking about these mysterious fish and, like, not understanding what the hell is going on there. And then, you know, in just trying to do his job and also stay alive, he damn near gets killed by his own colleague. I'm sorry. That's an HR moment, Mark. You got to talk to HR about that shit.
Yeah. Did those guys look like the kind of HR reps you want to run to with your story? Do you think you're going to get fair representation from those old dudes?
Listen, we all know that HR is bullshit because HR works for the company. HR does not work for the employee. So it's going to be the same fucking story everywhere. Hashtag unite here.
Okay, so fine. You're comfortable with snitch life. That's cool. I'm filing that away along with the libertarian.
hate
Kristine
you
is a
so
libertarian who loves snitches. Definitely is fact. And apparently spineless guys, because Casey is like, I'll comply. Oh, I'm a complier. Let me just comply. So it's good to know that these are your favorites.
Mark, I don't know what's going on with you today. People pleaser my ass. Like, what is your gripe with Casey? What has he done to you?
I told you it's in conflict. People pleasing is in conflict with my deep desire to share my controversial opinions, much like Mobius. I'm obviously totally kidding. I love Casey. He is also totally my favorite. So I want to give a shout out, though, to Judge Renslayer. Because first of all, that's a loaded name. I need to know more about what is a Ren and how do you slay it? And did she slay a bunch of them? What is going on with that backstory?
But she was definitely the person I had down for the one I'm most interested to learn more about in future episodes, especially because, and you and I share this, we love like a potential ship moment, and it seems like there's something going on with her and Mobius, or at least from Mobius's end. You never know if there's something going on at her end.
Right.
But she's just very, I wonder if she's part of, like, does she have communications with the timekeepers in order to administer quote unquote justice, which we know is not justice. I just don't know what the fuck to call it because I don't have the vocabulary to accurately describe this completely separate world of the TVA.
Regulations, maybe we could call them regulations, because that's not necessarily good or bad.
Or dictates, right? Because that's the word that she uses. So like, does she get those dictations directly, or does she just trust the process? Like, who signals the fact that there's a variant? Or, like, is her job literally just to sit there and order everyone to be pruned who comes before her? You know what I mean? And I also want to know, how does someone come before her? Or what happens to folks in Mongolia and the church in France? Like, what's the difference between someone coming before someone like Judge Renslayer and, having the timeline be reset in situ? What's the difference there? What is going on? What is her job? Who is telling her what her job is? Or does she literally just sit there and just pronounce death sentences all fucking day and that's it?
Yeah, it's hard to stand her when you put it like that. I think that's a really good...
Sorry.
No, it's true, though. It's like, is her job just to, swing the axe? Is she more of the executioner than she is a judge? That's a really interesting... I mean, again, Slayer in the name might tip us off to that. And now you're making me think that there's a question of whether the timekeepers still exist at all anymore. Because she sort of does blow off the question about where all this comes from. And it makes me think that there's some kind of inertia. Bureaucracies often can kind of carry on well past the point of their purpose. They can kind of take on a sort of self-preservation or creation. They become their own entities independent of their purpose. And I wonder if, scratching that a little deeper with her, she might realize it's been a minute since she's heard from them or something like that.
So, Mark, I might destroy our feelings here for the judge.
Okay. Hurt me, Kristine, hurt me.
But, that's what I'm here to do, my friend. So you said, what does that even mean? So I literally Googled, what is a Ren? Would you like to hear what a Ren is?
Please.
Ren in Chinese means humanity or humanness. So she is a slayer of humanity or humanness, which again goes back to that metal detector scene where they ask you to confirm your humanity, your soul before slaying it.
Fuck.
She's a baddie.
Yeah, that's a great catch. I don't know. Maybe she can learn. If Loki can learn, maybe Renslayer can learn. We shouldn't take it off the table. Just because we can't see her full timeline like we can see his, maybe there's more to her. I'm not ready to give up on the ship, but damn, that is pretty scary.
Oh my God.
Well, on that note, who is the scariest or most sinister member of the TVA?
I mean, Hunter B-15 scares the shit out of me. She scares the absolute shit out of me. All the hunters do. They're definitely shoot first, ask questions later type people.
Yeah, the fact that that one dude just calls Mobius a jackass, it's like, well, hold the fuck on, buddy. Like, let's just, take a chill pill.
Mobius was acting a little bit elitist in that moment,
But he was just doing his good cop shit again, and that guy, unlike me, is apparently impervious to Mobius's charms.
Because he's a bad guy. They're just really scary. But of course, they're not overpowering. Loki was able to get a hand on Hunter B-15 and turn the tables on her. So they're not, these all-powerful beings that are completely terrifying. But they're still pretty fucking terrifying when they've got this wand that they don't hesitate to use to obliterate you out of existence.
Not a fan.
I mean, that one dude, he's not a hunter. I guess he's a Minuteman, right? Who took out the Goldman Sachs guy. That he's not a Goldman Sachs guy, but the douchey American.
I asked that guy for a ticket. Oh man.
Right. Just took him out for not having a ticket. Like,
I kind of wanted to take him out, if I'm being honest. He was just a real SOB. I don't need no ticket, and then I have a ticket, and I don't know. I
asked him. The lies.
The lies, yeah.
The entitlement. Yeah.
Yeah, I might want that guy, too. I'm not proud of it, but I might, too. We talked about the HR reps and sashes. I think those dudes are a little bit scary. But I want to give a shout out to the robot scanner guy, too, because he had no concern about killing sentient robots or any of the moral quandaries that Loki posited. So that dude frightened me.
Oh, my God. And he was so annoyed that Loki was asking questions to begin with. He was just like, oh, could you hurry up and get through, please? Like, just go. Never mind the fact that you might melt from the inside going through this thing. And don't ask me about temporal auras. Just like, get out of my face. But at the same time, I'm like, dude, what are you doing with your life? Like, this is all the entertainment you're gonna get, right? Like,
Yeah.
Do they even get 15-minute breaks to go smoke? Like, do they get to have relationships with other people at the TVA? Do they sleep?
Yeah.
Like, we know nothing about these guys. And I'm just like, dude, this might literally be the only entertainment that you have all day. Why are you so annoyed that he's asking you questions?
And I'm betting that 9 out of 10 variants are interesting people because they figured out how to subvert linear time. So I would be like, hey, I'm excited to figure out, who's next. And let's talk for a second about whether, robots are people and what it means that we don't apparently think they have temporal auras or whatever, or incinerate them for no reason. So I don't know. That guy would hate Pondervision, so he is automatically sus to me, is what I'm saying. He would just hate
Yeah, we don't
shit.
like people who don't like Pondervision.
That's right. Okay, Kristine, it's time. I've been putting this off because it's a scary and exciting thing, but we should talk, as our final character of the day, about future Loki, or murder Loki, or hidden silhouette Loki, whatever way, a possible cabal of Lokis. So on Storycast, I did predict that the murderous Loki will turn out to be the future of this Loki, that this is something that he will go on to do because this Loki would need to know about the TVA in order to be stealing all of their time devices and stuff. Do you agree with that prospect?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, this is exactly what I was thinking of at the first time I saw the episode and kept texting you and Jesse, like, have you seen it yet? Have you seen it yet? Have you seen it yet? Because I wanted to talk about this future Loki. And I'm just like, why is Mobius about to train Loki to become future Loki? Like, what is this?
What on earth would take this Loki, who just seemed to be figuring out that there's a better path forward, what would turn him into this apparent serial killer?
I think he has to figure out that the TVA is full of shit and untrustworthy. Like I said to you at the beginning, Loki and Mobius were very clear about their end games here. Loki wants to burn this fucking place to the ground. And he also aptly described himself as a liberator. This Loki is here to liberate us from the tyranny of the sacred timeline. Okay, maybe not all of us, but he will at least liberate himself from the sacred timeline. Because as much as Loki talks about freedom being a lie and everyone wants to be subjugated, he means everyone else. He doesn't mean himself. Loki is not willing to be a slave to anyone, including time.
Right.
Once he realizes that he is a slave to time, and he realizes that there is power here to break free from it, he is going to work his ass to do it. And I think, Mobius made a mistake in telling Loki he's catching a Loki. Because now Loki knows that he has the power to become this Loki. So it just feels like this self-fulfilling prophecy that Mobius is now training this future Loki, which maybe is my linear way of thinking of things. But that seems like that's just obviously what's going to happen here.
That's such a great point, that the idea that now that Loki knows it's possible to not only escape the TVA, but take them on for himself specifically, that would be a pretty intoxicating thought to him.
Right. And I think this also lends some theory to the Cabal idea that there are multiple Lokis. Because what was it that Mobius said? This was when he was in his bad cop mode, and he had just shown Loki Frigga's dead body, and he's showing him that his future is already dictated and all of this stuff, and Loki's like fighting the images, and Mobius says, that's the proper flow of time, and it happens again and again and again because it's supposed to, because it has to. And I'm like, happens again and again and again? What the fuck does that mean? Like I can understand the concept of time feeling linear for us, but if you look at it from a different angle, it's everything happening all at once. It's a cylinder going down as opposed to a cylinder going across, which was how it was portrayed in the Ms. Minutes video, as the cylinder going across, our linear understanding of it. But if you turn it 90 degrees, you see it going down and it's time happening all at once, which is how like Dr. Manhattan experiences time, right? So like, I get that. But then if it's happening again and again and again, then is Mobius going to end up training multiple Lokis?
Maybe that does get back to this idea of the Mobius strip, the idea that we're all sort of looping through it. Maybe even for the TVA, they're on a kind of loop cycle where time completes itself. The universe expands and then contracts, and then they start again monitoring this timeline over and over again. But God, that really is a question I feel like I need an answer to now.
Right?
Shit.
You don't want to live inside my brain, Mark. Like, it is a tangled madness right now because of this show.
You need some timekeepers for your mind, Kristine. They got to smooth
really
it all out,
do.
take all those tangles away. Who wants to think about it all? Don't have any bad thoughts. We'll just take them away for you.
I literally need the timekeepers in pill form because I'm just like, there are way too many fucking branches that this show is creating. It's too much. But at the same time, it's so much fun. But I did wake up at 4:00 in the morning one day thinking about this show. So I think I'd been dreaming about it and woke myself up. It's really fucking with me. And it's only episode 1. So
only episode 1.
Only episode 1. I cannot wait to dissect this show more with you. It's going to be good.
Well, do you have any suggestions for Loki and Mobius about how to catch a Loki, this Loki, or Lokis?
I think Scott Lang had the answer, man. Call the fucking Avengers. Like, I don't really fucking know. How to catch a Loki? I don't know, man. Like,
he likes a shiny object, right? My thing is give him something irresistibly shiny to pursue. For example, we know he's going after these little time devices. Create, or at least imply that there's some kind of time mega bomb somewhere, give him a chance to try to go heist that, and then set up a trap. That's my 2 cents for the detective team of Mobius and Loki.
So here's the thing. I immediately go to something like Loki has to be the hero in the story, right? Because he lives for that celebration.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like he craves that kind of attention. He wants to be seen as the savior for everyone. But as we talked about in our preview episode, this is the kind of scenario where no one's gonna know that you're the savior. So somehow, I think Mobius is gonna have to figure out a way for Loki to have some type of credit.
Okay.
For his cooperation, his participation, or something in order for this to work, in order for him to actually catch this Loki. I don't think Loki's gonna catch this Loki. I think Loki is going to become this Loki, or he's gonna figure out a way to take over the goddamn TVA and essentially be a timekeeper.
If Loki's final fate is to become the keeper of the sacred timeline, I can't decide if that's the best or most painful outcome for his character.
Oh my God, it's going to be super chaotic. Like whatever it is, because he's a chaos agent, right?
Yep.
Like he's the little finger of this whole place.
And maybe you need one of the timekeepers to be a bit of a chaos agent, that you can't have 3 order-obsessed people. You need someone who's willing, like Mobius is inside of the TVA, to, shake things up a little.
Yeah. This would be so good.
Well, we're only a couple days away from the new episode, so we will get some more answers and be able to talk even more about all of these characters. But in the meantime, Kristine, where can people find and follow you?
People can find and follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Kippins K, and you could always listen to me and my friend Jocelyn go on about pop culture at the I'ma Need More One podcast.
Yeah, and again, if you haven't listened to their Thor/Loki episode, For Whom the Quim Mules, I'm not kidding, it's incredible. If you're into wide-ranging theories about these characters and really great thirst segments and all of that, I can't recommend it enough, so please check that out. All right, legendary listeners, that is the show for today. Loki episode 2 is just 2 days away, and we will be back with Storycast on Thursday, Pondervision on Saturday, and then another Charactercast on Monday. I cannot wait to learn more about our mysterious other Loki. In the meantime, please feel free to leave us one of those 5-star reviews on Apple. As a reminder, I will read every single one of them on a special episode once we cross 100 of them. So we are almost halfway there. Help us make me look silly and say stuff about whatever you put in that review. As long as it isn't offensive, I will read it. Also, you can follow the club. We are all over the place now. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Marvelous TV Club. We've got the new website. We've got merch on that website. And if that's not enough, come find me on Twitter at Marc Faletti. That's Marc with a C, F like Frank, Aletti. All right, until then, Kristine, let's go steal one of those time-traveling shovel sticks from the 3rd millennium. Maybe I can be DB Cooper this time.
Oh, I'm going to be an oil baron.